Hey folks, I recently managed to get a new 1 to 70 speedrun world record in only 1 hour and 55 minutes by using Chromie Time. The speedrun represents the absolute best time that you can achieve by using my route, and with this video guide, I aim to break down my route into simple, easy to follow steps so that you can use it to quickly level characters for yourself. Also, while I obviously use many fancy experience buffs and consumable items for the purposes of my speedruns, these are not taken into account for the purposes of this leveling guide. These items obviously save a small amount of time, but in practice the route itself is what makes this leveling method so fast. If you're interested in learning more about the items that I prepare for my speedruns, I've made a separate video purely on that topic which is linked in the description below. But with all of that out of the way, let's jump into the guide. Before you can enter Chromie Time and begin following the bulk of this route, you'll first need to reach level 10. How you'll do this will vary heavily depending on the race that you selected. If you're playing an allied race, you'll already begin the game at level 10, so you can skip ahead to the next section of my guide. However, any brand new players watching this video won't be able to create an allied race as their first character, so you'll need to pick one of the standard races and begin at level 1. While every race will be presented with multiple options as their starting zone, I would always recommend choosing Exile's Reach. This zone may not be exceptionally fast, but it was tailor-made by Blizzard to get your characters exactly from levels 1 to 10. Additionally, the zone is extremely linear and tries to teach you basic mechanics of the game as you progress the questline, meaning it's very helpful for new players. The only small exception to this rule would be if you plan on leveling a human, which is the race that I selected for my world record run. The standard human starting zone is Northshire Valley, and although it's not very fast on its own, it's directly next to a bunch of important locations within my leveling route. Elwynn Forest is one of the best zones for Alliance, and it's going to be the first part of my route after you reach level 10. Additionally, the entrance for the Darkmoon Fair is located in the nearby town of Goldshire, and this is very important for speed leveling for reasons we'll discuss later on in the video. To top it off, Stormwind City is only a small distance away, so when you're asked to travel there later in the guide, it'll be a pretty quick trip. Obviously, Northshire Valley is significantly faster than Exile's Reach in a speedrunning context, as you're able to access powerful items earlier than you'd normally be able to, but I would argue that it's still faster even for a casual player. That being said, the difference between these two zones will likely be marginal, so I would urge you to prioritize picking whatever race you think is the coolest. If that happens to be human, then whichever zone you choose is a matter of personal preference, and if you want to try the standard starting zone, just skip ahead to the level 10 section of my guide and begin questing in Elwynn Forest. Don't worry about starting 10 levels behind, as my guide includes multiple backup zones at the end to account for this. Lastly, if you're playing a Demon Hunter or a Death Knight, your only option will be to level through your class's starting zones, and this will put you past level 10 by the time you finish. Don't worry though, because my guide has been structured in such a way that you can jump straight into the level 10 section and not lose any time. Once you've managed to reach level 10, you'll first want to do a few quests to acquire a Dalaran Hearthstone. This only takes a few minutes and it'll save a ton of time over the course of the 10 to 70 leveling process. Although the Dalaran Hearthstone was added to the toy box during Dragonflight, you're unable to actually use it on new characters until you've completed the original unlock quests. To kick things off, you'll need to speak to Chromie and begin the Legion questline. If you're unsure where to find her, head to the Stormwind Embassy and look for a gnome sitting on a big hourglass. After receiving the quest, The Legion Returns, you should run to the Stormwind docks and speak with Recruiter Lee. This NPC should have a dialogue option that starts with "I've heard this tale before," and you want to select it in order to skip the Broken Shore introduction. If the dialogue option isn't appearing, it means you've never done the Broken Shore scenario on your account. For your first character, you'll still want to complete this scenario, as it only takes about 15 minutes and allows you to skip the entire thing on all future leveling runs. Once you've reached Dalaran, you can turn in the nearby quest to receive your Dalaran Hearthstone. If you already have the toy unlocked on your account, you can just delete the quest reward itself and add the toy to your bars. From here, fly towards the Alliance section of the city and take the portal back to Stormwind. It's worth noting that the process I just described is technically not needed if you're playing a mage, monk, dark iron dwarf, or some combination of the two. Each of these classes and/or race have an ability which completely removes the need for a Dalaran Hearthstone. However, you should still speak with Chromie and select a timeline, as this ensures all zones will scale with your level. I also want to make it absolutely clear that after returning from Dalaran, you do not need to visit Chromie and change your active expansion. Despite the misleading design of the menu, Chromie Time is actually a binary state. It's either fully enabled or fully disabled for your character. The only difference between the various expansions is which breadcrumb quests you get offered, like the aforementioned one for traveling to Dalaran. Also, your active expansion will determine which random dungeons you're allowed to queue for, but beyond that, all of them function exactly the same for the purposes of questing. Lastly, if the Darkmoon Fair happens to be active while you're leveling, this is the ideal time to swing by and grab your 10% experience buff. The fair is active during the first full week of every month, and you can also see when it's up by looking at your in-game calendar. There are many ways to reach the Darkmoon Fair, but the fastest path involves taking the portal to Old Dalaran and receiving a teleport from the Darkmoon Mage standing in the nearby courtyard. From here, you can run down the hill into the fair proper, purchase a carousel ticket from a panda named Katie, and ride the carousel to receive your 10% XP buff. There's a few more niche advantages that the Darkmoon Fair provides for leveling, but they're a bit more complicated, so you should watch my speedrun items video if you want to learn more. Now, you should be ready to start the 10 to 70 route, but before we dive into specifics about the zones and quests, I want to briefly go over a few bits of general advice that apply to the route as a whole. First, I strongly urge you to only follow the listed zones in the route without taking extensive detours. If I don't mention a zone in my guide, it's not because I forgot about it, it's because it's slower than the rest of my route. Also, if you feel that you're not getting enough experience from completing quests, please double check that you've actually enabled Chromie Time, as otherwise your XP gains will eventually be reduced by 90%. You would be surprised at how often people make this exact same mistake. The final general tip that I want to discuss pertains to rare mobs. You'll find many of these while following my leveling route, and it's especially important within any Cataclysm revamp zones such as Elwynn Forest or Loch Modan. Each one of these rares gives roughly a quest's worth of experience, so it can be extremely helpful to hunt for them while you're leveling. However, this is not the case for any rares you encounter in Warlords of Draenor zones, as those give a standard amount of experience and aren't worth killing. In order to help you find all of the important rares while leveling, I've created a companion video on my second channel which goes over the location of every single rare, and you can find it linked in the description below. That being said, the zones mentioned in my guide will still be faster than any alternatives even if you don't manage to find a single rare mob. It's a nice little bonus if you happen to encounter one, but you should never sit and wait at a spawn location instead of continuing along the quest path. The first zone you'll be visiting at level 10 is Elwynn Forest. Since it's located just outside of Stormwind, getting there is extremely simple, and you'll want to begin by completing all of the quests within Goldshire. Although this zone has a lot of travel time, as you'll be sent back and forth between Goldshire and the southern farms, the fact that you now get skywriting immediately upon reaching level 10 means this isn't an issue. Once you've completed all of the quests in central Elwynn, you should fly a bit to the west and complete the quests that task you with killing gnolls and defeating Hogger. Some of these quests will end in the nearby zone of Westfall, but after turning them in you shouldn't continue along that chain. You'll now want to fly all the way back across Elwynn Forest and hand in the quest Further Concerns in the east. From here, pick up and complete every quest that you find in and around the town of Eastvale Logging Camp. Once you've finished up every quest in Elwynn Forest, you should fly east towards Tower Watch, which is found just past the border inside of Redridge Mountains. Pick up and complete all of the quests at this location, as you'll eventually be directed towards the town of Lakeshire. Follow the quest lines in this area until you reach the quest Prisoner of War, which you'll get shortly after reaching Camp Everstill. The quests from here on out are sparse, RP heavy, and take a while to complete, so I do not recommend finishing them. Instead, you'll want to abandon Redridge Mountains and fly southwest towards Duskwood, the next zone in the leveling route. At some point during this process, you should have reached level 20, and you'll now have the option to enable War Mode. This can only be enabled at Stormwind, so you should set your Hearthstone to the nearest inn and then use your Dalaran Hearthstone. From here, you can take the nearby portal to reach Stormwind, enable War Mode, and then use your regular Hearthstone to return to your current leveling zone. As previously mentioned, mages or monks can use portals or Zen Pilgrimage, respectively, as a replacement for the Dalaran Hearthstone. Also, in case you're unfamiliar with what exactly War Mode does, this is a buff that grants you roughly 10% additional experience while also permanently flagging your character for PvP. This may sound really scary, but you have to remember that Elwynn, Duskwood, Redridge, and Loch Modan are all Alliance-only zones, so you'll never encounter a Horde player while leveling there. This means that War Mode is effectively a free 10% XP buff for the first 4 zones in my route. When you get to Warlords of Draenor later on, there is a small chance that you'll encounter other Horde players, but the vast majority of people are simply there to level and won't try to fight you. In the worst case scenario, you can always go to a nearby town and disable War Mode later on if you run into someone who really wants to kill you. Now, before we discuss the next zone, Duskwood, I want to take a moment to touch upon dungeon leveling. Over the last few years, I've done a few test runs that completed Burning Crusade dungeons from levels 10 to 20, and I found that it can potentially be faster under specific situations. Since War Mode only applies to outdoor content, and it isn't available until level 20, it's possible to get marginally faster times in TBC dungeons if you queue as a tank and get extremely lucky with the random dungeons that you're offered. In practice, I wouldn't actually recommend running dungeons for Alliance players, as on average it'll be much slower than the questing route. However, if you did really want to try dungeon leveling and want more detail on the subject, I discussed it in a bit more detail in the written version of this guide, which is linked in the description. As previously mentioned, you'll now want to fly to Duskwood and complete nearly every quest in the zone, and you should start by heading to the town of Darkshire in the east. While Duskwood does have a lot of travel time between hubs, the overall quest density is very high, and the addition of skywriting makes this less of a concern. After finishing all of the quests in and around Darkshire, you should head west and complete the hubs in that part of the zone. The only quest you should not complete is the final one, which tells you to kill Morladim, as it requires a ton of travel for a minimal reward. Upon reaching that quest and completing all others, you should return to Stormwind. Now you'll want to reach Loch Modan, but getting there will require a decent amount of travel time. The simplest and fastest option will usually be to fly there directly on your skywriting mount, as this only takes a minute or two. Once you arrive in the zone, you'll want to fly to the southern section of Loch Modan and start the questline in the Valley of Kings. You'll eventually be directed up north to the town of Thelsimer, and from here you should complete every single quest in the zone. Throughout Loch Modan, there are 6 interactable objects called Stolen Explorers League documents, and they'll give you a quest when you interact with them. A few of these are directly in your questing path, but many of them are off the traditional route, so I recommend looking up their exact locations in order to make sure you don't miss any. This may seem trivial, but each object gives full quest XP for minimal effort, so it's absolutely worth going out of your way to pick these up. In the past, this is where I would have recommended starting Warlords of Draenor zones, but the addition of skywriting means that certain quests up north in the Wetlands are now efficient to complete. This questline begins in the mountains around Dun Algaz, where you can turn in, checking on the boys, and grab the follow-up quests. You'll only need to complete a handful of quests in the subzone before you're directed to fly a bit further northeast towards Slab Chisel Survey. This quest hub is really efficient, as you'll complete 3 sets of 3 different quests, each of which is relatively fast. However, after you've completed all of the quests here, I wouldn't recommend continuing along this chain, as the rest of the quests in the zone aren't nearly as efficient. Once you're finished up in the Wetlands, you should use your Dalaran Hearthstone and return to Stormwind. Once there, head over to Chromie and select the Warlords of Draenor timeline. You'll be directed to speak with an NPC called Vanguard Battle Mage, but you should instead talk to the Honorhold Mage who can be found standing nearby in the entrance of the Stormwind Mage Tower. Talking to the Honorhold Mage NPC will cause you to be teleported directly next to Khadgar in the Blasted Lands, allowing you to immediately start the next quest. The Vanguard Battle Mage, despite being the intended NPC, will teleport you much further away from Khadgar. After speaking with Khadgar, you should fully complete the Warlords of Draenor intro scenario. Many people like to skip this area, but it's still one of the fastest questlines in the entire game, so if you skip it, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. Once you reach Shadowmoon Valley, complete the entire questline to set up your garrison, as this provides you with a garrison hearthstone. You'll also want to finish the next few quests where you kill pale orcs, gather supplies, construct a barracks, and rescue Kiana Moonshadow. Around this time, you should receive a quest in your garrison from Cordana Felsong named Meet Us at Starfall Outpost. Complete this entire chain up until the quests Soul Shards of Summoning and Cleaning Up Golvar, as things slow down immensely from that point onwards. You should now fly south and complete the Bloodthorn Cave bonus objective, along with the nearby quest A Matter of Life and Death. The next full zone you'll be questing at is Gorgrond, but getting there will require a bit of travel time. While you could just take a straight path to the zone from your garrison, there's a slightly more optimized route that involves a few detours. First, fly west to Talador and complete the Aruna's Desolation bonus objective. You can then head north until you reach Fort Rin, and you'll want to construct the artillery tower to unlock the Zangara bonus objective. Ignore the remaining quests in Fort Rin and head east to complete this aforementioned bonus objective. When it's done, fly north into Gorgrond and complete the Tailthrasher Basin and Ruins of the First Bastion bonus objectives. Upon finishing both, head to your rel on the eastern coast and begin the questline. Follow these quests until you reach the town of High Pass. At this point, you'll be prompted to choose between the Sparring Ring or the Logging Camp. The Sparring Ring is significantly better than the Logging Camp, as it gives you access to a ton of extremely efficient quests later on. Continue along the questline and pick up a Harsh Reminder in Affliction Ridge. While doing this, round up a wide variety of mobs and pop your champion's honor ability. This spell has a hidden effect that drops quest starting items when you kill certain enemies with it active. Under Draenor Exploration, there's an achievement called Prove Your Strength, and this can help you keep track of which items you've collected. You'll want to only use it when you've rounded up a few mobs of at least 2 types in order to maximize your chances at getting quest items. Around this point, you'll receive multiple quest lines, but you should complete everything in Stonemaul Arena before continuing onwards. The quests involving Rexar go on for a while and will lead you further north into the zone. You'll want to use your Champion's Honor ability on the Basilisks and Steam Furies that you'll encounter during the quest On the Mend. Later on, you can use it once again while killing Ogron during the quest Fair Warning. After you finish the quest Chains of Iron, you should complete the nearby bonus objective Valley of Destruction. Upon returning to High Pass, you'll receive a quest named Strike While the Iron is Hot. but this is extremely inefficient and should be ignored. Complete the Miscreant Mire and Razor Bloom bonus objectives just south of High Pass. While you're here, make sure you use Champion's Honor on the nearby Wasps and Ravagers. If you have any leftover time on the buff after getting the Wasp and Ravager items, you can try to kill any nearby orcs in Botany to get their associated quest items in case you're still missing either one. Next, head east and complete the entire Crimson Fen questline. If you haven't yet managed to hit level 70, you should use your Garrison Hearthstone once again. Your next stop is Spires of Arak, but before you enter the zone itself, you should fly just north of it and complete the Zorkra's Fall bonus objective in Talador. From here, head into Spires of Arak and progress through the questline until you reach level 70. Spires of Arak is a peculiar zone, as it has a fairly high quest density early on, but falls off significantly towards the end. Upon reaching Southport, you can construct the Stockturn Brewery, which gives you 20% increased experience within Spires of Arak, as well as a localized Hearthstone ability on a separate cooldown. While this buff is nice to have, it's nowhere near as impactful as many people seem to think it is. By the time you get the 20% XP buff, you've already completed most of the efficient quests in the zone, so it doesn't end up helping you much. After building the tavern, you'll want to pick up the wanted quests from a poster on the wall, as these give great experience and can be usually completed alongside other quests. Now that you've finished leveling in Chromie Time, you'll need to enter War Within zones to level from 70 to 80. I've already fully optimized War Within 70 to 80 leveling with a record time of only 1 hour and 4 minutes. If you'd like to learn more about how to follow that route, you can click on the video shown on screen or find a link to it in the description. Additionally, if you're interested in leveling a Horde character from 1 to 70, I've made a separate video on that subject. If you found this video helpful, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe and toss it a like, as that'll help other people find it as well.